Well, good morning. It's a holiday weekend, but I'm so glad you're here. And for those of you who are joining us online, I'm so glad you all are here. You are missing the oatmeal cookies, however, by not being here. And those of you in the back, including the Cookie Monster, welcome. I'm Katie Updike. I'm a member of the Standing Committee, and we really are glad you're here. We have a number of visitors. I think this is part of being a holiday weekend, but in particular, we have Reverend Mary Katharine Morn, who is the president of the UU Service Committee. And this is a nonprofit organization that advances human rights around the world with grassroots and other local advocates. So we are very honored to have you. Thank you. To learn more about First Church or Unitarian Universalist, please feel free to contact any of the members of the Standing Committee or either of these lovely ladies up here, and or go online and look at our website. Today, you can certainly look through your program for a number of announcements. We had a big election, our annual meeting last week, and so we have a whole new roster of leaders. But I would like to bring your attention to the June 8th barbecue, and that's on Flower Sunday. So sort of two reasons to have some fun here. And thank you so much for being here today and joining us. Let the service begin.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Stephanie May, and I use the pronouns she and her. And this is our very special guest today, Reverend Mary Katharine Morn. Today we pause to remember how a group of people gathered in Boston 200 years ago tomorrow to sign the charter of the American Unitarian Association, one of the two institutional roots of today's Unitarian Universalist Association.
Looking to the past, we do not retreat from the struggles of the present moment. Rather, we ask, as others have asked before us, what can safeguard moral clarity? Offering one answer, author, activist, and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel said, "If anything can, it is memory that will save humanity."
In this hour, let us remember the past, but even more, let us bear witness to all that history teaches us about justice and freedom and the call of our own moment to join the moral fight to save humanity. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit as we light our chalice and say our affirmation. The chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism that was actually first drawn as the symbol of the Unitarian Service Committee in World War II in their work supporting getting folks out of Nazi-occupied territories in Europe. And we adopted it as a movement. Let us say together, love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please take a moment to greet one another and wave to our friends online and the camera by the clock.
That's great. Thanks. Do you have that on plan?
Please remain standing as you wish to sing our opening hymn 281, O God, Our Help in Ages Past. Our beloved choral ensemble is enjoying a Sunday off, but I have faith that we can sing even without their support. So please join in singing, and as you are, it doesn't have to be perfect or great. Thank you.
You sound beautiful. I am really happy to have the privilege of sharing a story with you this morning from Mem Fox. I love this story for a number of reasons. It's called Wilfrid Gordon MacDonald Partridge. I also have more names than are necessary. I go by Mary Katharine, and so I am sympathetic with Wilfrid Gordon. This is Wilfrid, and this is Miss Nancy. There once was a small boy called Wilfrid Gordon MacDonald Partridge. And what's more, he wasn't very old either. His house was next door to an old people's home, and he knew all the people who lived there. He liked Mrs. Jordan, who played the organ. He listened to Mr. Hosking, who told him scary stories. He played with Mr. Tippett, who was crazy about cricket. He ran errands for Miss Mitchell, who walked with a wooden stick. He admired Mr. Drysdale, who had a voice like a giant. But his favorite person of all was Miss Nancy Allison Delacourt Cooper, because she had 4 names just as he did. He called her Miss Nancy and told her all his secrets. One day, Wilfrid Gordon heard his mother and father talking about Miss Nancy. "Poor old thing," said his mother. "Why is she a poor old thing?" he asked. "Why, she has lost her memory," said his father. "What's a memory?" asked Wilfred Gordon. He's always asking questions. "It's something you remember," said his father. But Wilfred Gordon wanted to know more, so he called on Mrs. Jordan, who played the organ. "What's a memory?" he asked. "Something warm, my child, something warm." He called on Mr. Hosking, who told scary stories. "What's a memory?" he asked. "Something from long ago, my lad, something from long ago." He called on Mr. Tippett, who is crazy about cricket. "What's a memory?" he asked. "Something that makes you cry, my boy, something that makes you cry." He called on Miss Mitchell, who walked with a wooden stick. "What's a memory?" "Something that makes you laugh, my darling, something that makes you laugh." He called on Mr. Drysdale, who had a voice like a giant. "What's a memory?" he asked. "Something as precious as gold, young man, something as precious as gold." So Wilfred Gordon went home again to look for memories for Miss Nancy, because she had lost her own. He looked for the shoebox of shells he'd found long ago last summer, and he put them gently in a basket. He found the puppet on strings, which always made everyone laugh, and he put that in the basket too. He remembered with sadness the medal which his grandfather had given him, and he placed it gently next to the shells. Next, he found his football, which was precious as gold. And last of all, on his way to Miss Nancy's, he went into the hen house and took a fresh, warm egg from under the hen. Then Wilfred Gordon called on Miss Nancy and gave her each thing one by one. "What a dear, strange child to bring me all these wonderful things," thought Miss Nancy. And then she started to remember. She held the warm egg and told Wilfred Gordon about the tiny speckled blue egg she had once found in a bird's nest in her aunt's garden. She put a shell to her ear and remembered going to the beach by tram long ago and how hot she'd felt in her button-up boots. She touched the medal and talked sadly of the big brother she had loved, who had gone off to war and never returned. She smiled at the puppet on strings and remembered the one she had shown to her sister and how she laughed with a mouth full of porridge. She touched the football. She bounced the football to Wilfred Gordon and remembered the day she had first met him and the secrets they had shared. And the two of them smiled and smiled, because Miss Nancy's memory had been found again by a small boy, and he wasn't very old either.
Thank you, Mary Catherine. When my grandmother was born in 1922, her parents named her Betty Lou. As I remember the story, her doctor gave a rose bush to my great-grandmother. The rose was also a variety called Betty. Planted and replanted from house to house, the bush still blooms in my mother's garden 103 years later. Anticipating that I will become the next caretaker of the rose, I have planted roses for the last decade or so, hoping to learn what I need to know to help a rose bush endure. Memories are living tendrils that entwine the present and past and future. While memories can flicker, not all memories are fragile. As the story of Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge reminds us, memories can be fiercely resilient, subtly emerging with vibrant color, scent, and sound within and around us. On this eve of the anniversary of the founding of the American Unitarian Association, or AUA, on May 26, 1825 in Boston, what might we remember of our own story as a church? Do we remember the financial pain of May 1825? The first church records of 1824 and into 1825 make clear that the society was in debt due to necessary repairs to the building they had just moved into 17 years earlier. Or do we consider how the Revolutionary War was still personal memory to many, not yet codified into the histories we tell today? A stone for a monument had been laid in Concord the month before, marking the 50th anniversary of the Revolution, and another would be laid in Bunker Hill in June. Survivors of that battle were expected to attend. In other words, they were building monuments of their memories so that future generations, us, might remember their experiences and values. And of course, also that May, the Federal Street Church, with its famous Unitarian minister, William Ellery Channing, you've probably seen his sculpture there at the big statue at the corner of the public garden. He gathered for the 5th time a group to hear a Berry Street lecture that promoted Unitarian thinking. And yet, that same Channing refused to join this newly formed AUA, fearing the power of institutions over the free thinking of individuals. After the recent years of religious friction and fracture among the liberals and conservatives of Boston, Channing was not the only one skeptical of joining an association. Days after the May 26 formation of the AUA, the June 4, 1825 issue of the weekly Boston-based Christian Register included a notice for a meeting of, quote, the Bible Society of Massachusetts to be held on Thursday, June 9 at 11 o'clock at First Church. Beyond these particulars, the announcement added, quote, as this is one of the few religious societies remaining which is entirely free from sectarian bias, it is hoped that we can feel interested in a cause which does not exclusively favor our sectarian peculiarities. Decades later, First Church minister, the Reverend Nathaniel Langdon Frothingham, remembered the schismatic time, writing, we have loved to dwell within ourselves and disliked to implicate our concerns with those of other churches or with any associations of men. In other words, trying to stay out of the fray, First Church chose isolation over association. And in that same moment, the younger Henry Ware, minister of the Second Church in Boston, was chief among those who formed the AUA and served in its leadership for many of its earliest years. An essay written in 1900 for the New England magazine explains neither Ware nor Ezra Stiles Gannett, Channing's associate minister, were, quote, sectarian in aim or method, but they wished to work with those who thought as they did, and they wished to have an opportunity of doing something to aid the cause which they had at heart, the restoration of the simple religion of Jesus Christ, end quote. In other words, They just wanted to organize themselves with others to do some good in the world. As a congregation today, with a story older than the nation or the city itself, what do we choose to remember? As an institution that includes the mergers of multiple congregations, including that of Ware's Second Church, whose stories do we choose to tell? What endures in the records tucked into the shelves of the Mass Historical Society? What has been lost to the choices of earlier generations on what to archive or not? What different choices could we make today in what we choose to remember and in how we tell our story? What might we choose to memorialize in our moment for future generations, and why? In order to gesture towards this moment, I wanted to include a hymn by Nathaniel Langdon Frothingham, who was the minister of First Church during the time of the Unitarian controversy, even though he infamously never said the word Unitarian from the pulpit of First Church. Instead, as you just heard in the quote, he chose to identify as a liberal Christian, and even though his thinking, in fact, theologically was Unitarian. So we sang this hymn at my installation the installation of myself as minister last spring. And it's Gigi tells me it's a fairly familiar tune. So I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing along. And the lyrics are in your order of service. So thanks to Gigi and Noel for supporting this song.
It's incredible to be here in this congregation as you are considering your covenant. I served in numerous Unitarian Universalist congregations before moving to the Boston area, all of which were in the rough range of celebrating their 50th anniversary. It's a real privilege to be here, and I'm so grateful for the invitation to be part of this service. I am grateful for your ministry, Stephanie, and for the ministry of this church that has been nurturing me this past year as a visitor and frequent attender of worship here. And I will say it's a year when my spirit has needed nurturing. Your warm welcome, this inspiring space, which I love, the words and prayers that Stephanie and Lindsay have offered this year, these have all been received and cherished by me. Thank you. And I love this question for today about what endures. I'm also interested in the implicit question, how do we ensure that what endures is what is worthy? How do we help to protect that which is worthy through time? Especially when we are living in times when so much is collapsing or under threat of collapse. Whenever I say things like that, I fear that I'm sounding overly dramatic. What do you say? No, thank you. You're with me. I appreciate that. Suddenly, it seems we cannot count on what we counted on before. Now, we do also recognize, I think, many of us, that this experience that so many of us has is in part a function of the privilege of our lives. This moment we are having to meet is like many other moments in time. And my current work at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee reveals this tension. At UUSC, as Katie shared, we partner with communities around the globe who are working for human rights, and we support just and equitable humanitarian response in times of disaster. So the collapse of democratic systems is old news to many of our partners. The devastating impact of climate change has already displaced UUSC partners in many other parts of the world. And further, I'm happy to say it's important to also add that these communities have rebuilt, created new systems for sustaining life, and toppled, not every time, but toppled centers of autocracy and abuse. Always things are dying and new things are being born. Still, the changes around us in this nation and on our planet are shaking us. What can we count on? What is called for from us? Activist and educator Adrienne Marie Brown speaks to the change and challenge of our times. This she wrote in 2017. We are living in impossible times. If it were fiction, it would be critiqued as hyperbolic. If it were nightmares, we would never sleep. Our visions are ropes through the devastation. Look further ahead, like our ancestors did. Look further, extend, hold on, pull, evolve. Our visions are ropes that hold us and lead us to what is not yet realized. But as Stephanie has already reminded us, our vision must be grounded in what we have learned from our ancestors, their wisdom and their shortcomings, and it's not always easy to tell the difference. In 1841, Reverend Theodore Parker preached an ordination sermon asking this question. It was called The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. Is that a familiar title to some of you? The Transient and the Permanent. Parker challenged the congregation to hold firmly to what is truly permanent in religion and shake off the fixed notions that we've grown beyond, that no longer serve us, the idolatries, whatever it is that is transient. So this is from his sermon. Anyone who traces the history of what is called Christianity will see that nothing changes more from age to age than the doctrines taught as Christian and insisted on as essential to Christianity and to personal salvation. What is falsehood in one province passes for truth in another. The heresy of one age is orthodox belief and only infallible rule of the next. Parker went on to challenge much of the establishment Unitarianism of his day with his radical theology and his social progressive efforts. I should have done research on what the ministers of this congregation, how they responded to Parker's sermon. The bottom line is, though we look to his ministry and his wisdom with much respect, his radical ideas, he was reviled in his own time. He was not welcomed as a visiting minister in many of the churches, many and most. His radical efforts for abolition, which included helping to fund and later defending John Brown's efforts to start a slave insurrection in Virginia, put many of the people of his time off, and they thought he had gone too far. He flaunted law enforcement's efforts to maintain order. He is asking too much, they said, too fast. This is a humbling reminder for us today, as we are challenged by all that is lost or all that is at risk, all that must give way to something new. So especially in times of great change, we all long for something that endures, something that is timeless, that will hold us if we hold on. But what is the right rope to hold? Well, Parker was clear. He said it is the eternal truth of God. Glad that's clear. Actually, I like the way Stephanie said it better. To organize ourselves with others in order to do some good in the world. I would say it is love, divine love, or maybe capital L life, and the love which makes the flourishing of all life possible. We can meet this ordinary and extraordinary moment faithfully by working to protect life and love in the face of all that would tear it down. To call for human rights for all people. To remember that because our vision is limited, we need the wisdom of memory and hope that is fired in the gift and discipline of community. And that even though we will fail again and again, each of us and all of us can take one small next action for the sake of love, and that any action for the sake of love is no small thing. Here, held in the hard-won memory and hope of this community, we look further ahead and further still, extending, holding on, pulling, evolving. Together, may we hear, discover, and answer the love that calls us, the love that holds us.
As we enter into a time of prayer and meditation, I invite you to take a deep breath in and out, and another in and out. Spirit of life and love, we gather in this moment, mindful of all that has come before us. The Massachusetts who lived upon this land and water long before any European colony. the English immigrants who crossed an ocean seeking to live their Christian faith in a pure, more authentic way, the revolutionaries who fought to preserve self-government, and the abolitionists who fought to extend freedom and human rights more fully to all. On this Memorial Day weekend, we also remember those who have died in war, as well as the wider cost of war to those who have loved those who have died. We pray that war may cease and comfort may be given to all those who suffer. In this moment, we mourn the ongoing loss of life in violent battles across the globe, from ongoing war in Gaza and Ukraine to the shooting of Israeli embassy staff in Washington this week. We grieve also the threats to life from climate change, poverty, and collapsing systems of social support. We gather today carrying the weight of sorrows, both these that are shared and those that we may feel alone as we struggle with illness or loss. As we feel this weight and the limits of all we cannot control, may we find some comfort in knowing that we are not alone. May we find some hope in knowing that there is more power when we join with others to do some good in the world. May we find joy in coming together with others in building and sustaining institutions that enable values and visions to endure even as they adapt generation to generation. Entering now into a time of stillness, may we meditate not only on all that weighs heavily on our hearts, but also on the wondrous joys that life and love bring to us all. So as many of you may know, as the name suggests, First Church is first, and then Second Church was the second church in Boston, established, okay, I'm going to not remember the exact date, I need help here, 1649, sound right? Okay. And then merged with First Church, again, came back in 1972. I mention that because they have a very long history of their own, and then they merged with us, and we sort of are the caretakers of their history. And these offering plates that we use every week are from Second Church. The inscription is presented to the Second Church in Boston, December 25th, 1907. So we keep alive the memory of Second Church every week as we gather these gifts to sustain this lasting institution here in the city. Thank you for your generosity. You may give here in person or online. There's a QR code also. Thank you.
And now, if you'll join me in responsive reading number 569. That's 569, Stand by This Faith, by the Reverend Olympia Brown. Stand by this faith, work for it, and sacrifice for it. There is nothing in all the world so important as to be loyal to this faith, which has placed before us the loftiest ideals, which has comforted us in sorrow, strengthened us for noble duty, and made the world beautiful. Do not demand immediate results, but rejoice that we are worthy to be entrusted with this great message, that you are strong enough to work for a great true principle without counting the cost. Go on finding ever new applications of these truths and new enjoyments in their contemplation, always trusting in the one God which ever lives and loves.
Thanks, Peter. And thank you, Mary Katharine, for being part of today's service. It's so much fun to work with a colleague. And also for reminding us of Parker's challenge to shake off what no longer serves us, even as we hold fast to what is eternal. So much has changed since the founding of First Church in 1630 and the creation of the American Unitarian Association in 1825. One of those great changes was the merger of Unitarians and Universalists in 1961. To the Unitarian heritage of a free and reasoned faith, Universalism brought a legacy of a deep and broad love. Universalist Olympia Brown is known as the first woman to achieve full ministerial standing recognized by a denomination here in the U.S. As we heard a moment ago, Brown believed that her Universalist faith merited loyal work and sacrifice. A vision of inclusive love may not bring immediate results, she acknowledged. And yet she urges the ongoing work of centering love in ever new applications. Today is the 5th anniversary of the killing of George Floyd. For many, Floyd's brutal death awakened the need to dismantle racial prejudice in policing and more broadly to assert Black Lives Matter. This was an application of love that insisted on the worthiness of Black lives. And yet, sadly, I read this morning that conservatives are attempting to revise the story of Floyd's death, that he died as the result of ill health, and even suggesting that his killer be pardoned. The past is not only behind us. Rather, the tendrils of the past, present, and future continually entwine in a living river of memory and story. In this moment, how we choose to remember the past conveys our sense of what we hope endures and what is transient. Moreover, the stories we tell today impact the directions we move into an unknown future. When you imagine the future, what do you hope endures for our descendants? Community? Freedom? Democracy? Justice? An inclusive and equitable love? When I think about caring for my grandmother's rose, I don't feel confident that I can keep the bush alive amidst changing culture, amidst the changing climate and my own divided attention. But I'm going to try. However, even if the rose bush dies, the gifts of life and love received from my mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother's care will still remain. We are all descendants and ancestors. The tendrils of life and love bind together the generations, even amidst great changes. In our moment, we may face different challenges than our ancestors in 1825, or different challenges than our descendants will face in 2125. None of us can control the future, but we can choose to move together in mutual love, joining with others to do some good in the world. I believe that associating with others within and beyond the walls of our church can strengthen this shared work. And indeed, in this moment, when so much is coming apart, choosing to come together around shared values of liberty, of freedom of speech and association is a radical thing to do. So I invite you to remain committed to that ancient covenant that calls us to come together and move together in mutual love and respect one to another. Ever entwined, the past, present, and future. As they come together, may we hold on to that rope that calls us to extend, hold on, pull, and evolve as we help life and love to flourish. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. And our closing hymn is 1028 in your teal hymnal, Fire of Commitment, which is so much fun to sing when Mary Katharine is here because she wrote the lyrics for this. So please rise in body or in spirit as we renew our sense of commitment to move forward and to the challenges of our moment.
Will you join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Sustained by our connections to each other and to all that is holy, let us go and be beyond these walls, engaging and associating across difference, loving with abundance, and working together to sustain our shared world. Blessed be. Amen.